Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Horse. I am so excited to be here with you again. My name is Ellen Rogin, and as always, I have great information to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And I am excited to share our topic and our guest with you today for a couple reasons. One, I know it'll be so helpful for you, and I'm secretly really excited about this because this is a growth edge for me. And we're going to talk about negotiation. Now, maybe you are black belt at this, and our guest will help you learn how to support your clients better in their negotiations. Or maybe you're like me, where this is an area that you know you could be better at. But we have such a great expert today. Kathleen Burns Kingsbury is our guest, and you may know her. She's spoken at so many industry meetings. That's actually where I met Kathleen, where we were both speaking at a conference. She is a wealth psychology expert and the founder of KBK Wealth Connection. She's the host of the Breaking Money Silence podcast, which you should 100% check out. She's written a bunch of books, including Breaking Money Silence, How to Shatter Money Taboos, Talk More Openly About Finances, and A Richer Life, which is her fifth book. Wow. She was named one of Investment News's top conference speakers, and that's why I suspect many of you have seen Kathleen before. But Kathleen, welcome. I'm so excited to have you on Horse's Mouth Live today.
Thank you, Ellen. It's really kind of fun to be here, so I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, so this topic of negotiation is so important, but I know you talk a lot, like your podcast is called Breaking Money Silence, and I just want to start with setting some foundation. Like, why is money silence important issue for advisors to be aware of and important for them to help break their clients of?
Sure. Well, money silence is that uncomfortable feeling that so many of us get, and certainly advisors' clients get when they're talking about money. And it's not just the dollars and cents, but really the emotions, the feelings about money, and talking about it out loud with other people. And so breaking money silence is really about how do you yourself or your clients bust through that money talk taboo. And the reason it's so important is that almost half of Americans would rather talk about death, dying, or politics than, well, I don't know about politics anymore, but politics than talk about money. And so if you're an advisor and your job is to get people to open up about their finances, then it really behooves you to be able to help them break money silence with you. And then ultimately, when we think about legacy planning or women asking for raises or, couples talking about money, coaching them to be able to break money silence in their own lives.
It seems like such an important skill for advisors to have. And I know we're going to talk about negotiation, but I just want to delve a little bit deeper into this whole money silence issue. It would seem to me that when an advisor is able to help their clients break through that money silence, it builds an even deeper relationship between the advisor and the client. Has that been your experience?
Yes, actually, my company did a little bit of research and we found out that not only when an advisor helps a client break money silence in their family, that they not only build a greater loyalty to that particular advisor, but they actually make more referrals and invest more assets with you. So there's a real business case for breaking money silence. And it's also something that I find advisors have wanted to do for a really long time. They just didn't have a roadmap like a lot of other people on how to do it, especially again when it comes to the emotional or the psychological part of money. Certainly, advisors are very skilled at the technical side.
So I know when I've heard people talk about negotiation, there's like strategies or tools or techniques. You're the first person I've heard talk about it in terms of how it relates to people's money psychology or their money silence issues. And I know you specifically, this can help anyone, but you've specifically looked at this in terms of how women negotiate. So, talk to us a little bit more about what this connection is and why you're so passionate about this topic.
Sure. When it comes to the money talk taboo, if you look at the subset of women, so what, 51% of our population, But if you look at the research out there around women actually engaging in money conversations, the statistics that's out there is 61% of women would rather talk about their own death than talk about finances with a friend or the loved one. So that probably includes an advisor as well. And so it really got me to thinking as to why is it so much higher for women? And I don't believe it's that women aren't financially literate or don't have the ability. I think it's because there is this double-edged sword that you may have it experienced as a woman in business, and I know I certainly have, where when you do develop the skills to talk openly and honestly about money, to negotiate for your worth, to ask for your value, unlike men, there is a backlash of being called too aggressive, too profit motivated, too business oriented, which are all compliments for men in business, but not necessarily a compliment for women. The other thing I discovered is that in our society still, despite how far we've come, that women not only internally feel shame around talking about money and feel as if the people in their lives are going to judge them. It's something like 40% of female breadwinners said they downplay their earning status if they're a breadwinner or a primary breadwinner to their family because they don't want to be judged. So it's like if we do it, we're encouraged to speak up about money and be financially literate. But if we do it, then somehow there's something unfeminine about us. And so that double bind really, to be honest with you, got me a little angry. And then I have witnessed this or experienced this myself, especially at the beginning of my career. I was an under earner without even realizing it because I was taught not to ask about money. I was taught that it was rude to negotiate. And so I had to teach myself what are the things that are getting in my way so I can be a successful business owner? And so I'm passionate about it because I've busted through and I'm not perfect by any stretch, but I've busted through and I feel so much better about it that I really just wanted to share that wealth with women entrepreneurs and certainly the advisors who serve them because I've been working with advisors for so long.
So, what is, in your opinion, it really mean to be a successful negotiator?
I think being a successful negotiator means that you are fairly comfortable talking about money, that you understand your own money psychology in terms of what's going to trigger you in a negotiation, what's going to be more difficult to talk about, what's going to be less, maybe your strength, what's going to be easier to talk about. And I think a successful negotiator is able to, in every money conversation, move the needle forward towards asking and actually getting paid what they're worth. And in a successful negotiation, in my mind, there's not a winner or loser. I mean, the best deals I've ever closed are deals where I feel really valued and the person who hired me feels really good about being able to keep in their budget or be able to justify why they're investing that much in my services. And so it really is just a calm, confident conversation, as opposed to, I know a lot of people are very fearful of engaging in that conversation. So that's what I think being successful in negotiating is having the confidence to be able to have the conversation and also to sometimes say, and it's hard, but sometimes say, you know what, this is not going to work for me and walk away. That can be really hard, especially, with everything that's going on in the world today.
So, can you share with us a few tips or strategies or suggestions for women to be better negotiators, or for men to be better negotiators, or for the advisor to support their clients in better negotiation? I'm assuming they're all kind of the same tips, but maybe with different viewpoints.
Yes, no, absolutely. So the first thing I always start with when it comes to being a great negotiator is really doing that internal work. So if anybody's seen me speak, they know that I typically do some sort of mindset exercise or some sort of self-awareness exercise as part of my engagements. And so it's exactly the same thing with negotiation. Really starting with, what is your negotiation mindset? So how do you think and feel about negotiating money in a particular situation? What are your strengths and what are your challenges? And so it really taps into what you were taught growing up around negotiation, maybe what people that share your gender or women have been taught about negotiation. And then if you've had any personal experiences that are going to impact your mindset either positively or negatively. So I really think the first step for everybody, whether you're a man, a woman, helping somebody negotiate or encouraging them to learn how to negotiate, it's really looking at that mindset, that psychological piece, because then you can start to look at what are the things that are going to be roadblocks for me and what are the things that are going to be strengths. And we all have both of them. And what I find is that often we jump right to the skills of negotiation, but if you don't really understand what's going to be that roadblock, it's really hard to adopt a new behavior. And most of the people that I've worked with find exploring their negotiation mindset kind of interesting and fun and something they hadn't really thought about in the past.
I
So that would
certainly
certainly
haven't
be the
thought.
first thing.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it. I've thought about my money mindset a lot, my money history. When you said, like, what you were taught about negotiation, I was not taught anything. If anything, I'm thinking the thing that came to mind was kind of asking permission. I never saw my mom negotiating anything with my dad. It was like, I mean, this was a long time ago, but it was, well, let's ask dad if we can do that, or let me ask your father for a check. She didn't have her own checkbook, which, clearly is not my reality now. Uh, but so if someone comes up with thinking like, oh, I don't have any background in that, or I'm just nervous about it for whatever their reasons are, is some of it just bringing that to the forefront? Like, oh, isn't that interesting? And then just knowing that makes it disappear. Or are there strategies when you find a limiting belief around negotiation that are helpful for clearing those limits away?
I think it's the second in that, the awareness is really important. But once again, it's awareness. If you were taught, if you weren't taught about negotiation, then that says a lot about, you negotiating in the world, right? So you didn't get a roadmap for how to do it. I know for myself, I grew up with thrifty Yankee parents, so I knew how to drive a bargain if it was, for a sale item in a store. But I was never encouraged or taught anything about negotiating for a salary or asking for money when it comes to paying for my services. And so I actually learned a lot from other people. And my biggest roadblock, which I think is a lot of women out there have this roadblock, is somehow you were greedy or you weren't nice or there was something just desperate about negotiation, as opposed to when you work to shift your thoughts around negotiation. And I've certainly, I've done work in this area and have set up a system for other people to do that work. What you start to realize is that it's very similar to a money talk mindset, that if you think negotiation is rude, chances are you're going to be really nervous. You're going to come up with all sorts of reasons not to negotiate. But now my mindset is negotiation is part of a successful businesswoman's life. And so when I approach a negotiation, it's really more of, oh, this is what you need to do when you're successful. And when you are more successful, I always thought when you're more successful, the negotiation goes away. Not true. The more successful you are, the more negotiations you have, and the more often you have to kind of do this. And so practice does make people better. But I think the biggest thing for people to start to look at isn't to be harsh when you look at your negotiation mindset. It's just noticing, what are the things I was taught? What wasn't I taught? And how does that impact my behavior? Knowing that then you can work with that to reframe things and shift those beliefs. And I find once they're shifted, it becomes a much easier, less anxiety provoking conversation.
That makes so much sense. I think about our two kids. We have a son and a daughter. And our son, I feel like since birth, was a good negotiator. He was always trying to he would make requests really easily and was always trying to get a negotiation in his favor, not to the point where it hurt someone else or in a manipulative way. And our daughter, I've worked to try to help her be better at making requests, but that's also different. It's part of this, but it's different than negotiating. So I'm curious, why do you think, like, same family, same parents, but they're showing up in different ways
Yeah.
in terms of how they're, again, making requests, but also negotiating things?
Well, it's interesting because there's a theory out there that we're all born with a certain money temperament and money personality. And then from there, it's learning about financial literacy, learning these skills. And so what may come easy to one child in a family may be more challenging to another. And so it's the whole idea that certainly parents influence and significant caregivers and teachers influence people. but also it's working with kind of what your genetics are, kind of who you are. And so I agree. I've watched. I don't have kids myself, but I've watched my nephew and my niece, and they all are very different around money, even though they grew up in the same family. And actually, my niece, I'm proud to say, has become the best negotiator out of the group, and is now teaching other young women how to negotiate. So again, it really is kind of fascinating to me how complicated this thing called money and how we think about money actually is.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I love that she's teaching her friends how to do this.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
yeah, it's beautiful, and actually, as I was saying this, thinking about our daughter, she's a super great saver. She does not is a girl of very few wants, right? She's happy camping and,
Mhm.
and so when she got her job when she just graduated college, which is awesome, when our son got his job, he immediately tried to get a higher salary, and Amy's like, "I can ask, but, like, this is fine." And so some of
Yeah.
it is complicated because she has less it was fine for her, and it wasn't I don't even know if I doubt it was that she didn't feel she deserved more, but she's was just more content with that. So I see how it's very complicated.
Well, and I think part of that could potentially be gender and how we're influenced. Because when you do look at the research, a lot of women, at least more for my generation, so Gen X or boomers, we didn't negotiate as much as men. And so then we started off with a lower salary. And then over time, that really, creates somewhat of a gap. For what I'm finding, millennial women and Gen Z is that the research is showing that people are asking just as much, but women who ask are viewed differently. And so women aren't as successful. I don't think it's because they're not good negotiators. I think it's because of that unconscious bias that's out there around what he potentially needs to make versus she needs to make. I'm hopeful that that will change. And that's where I think, systematically some things need to change, but also internally, if we each can do our part, then we can kind of have this trickle effect. And one other thing I just thought of when it comes to advisors. Advisors often will come to me and say, it's hard to ask for my fee, to negotiate my fee, to communicate my fee with my client. So this type of work can be really useful for them as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm just thinking back to when I was seeing clients. That was not hard for me, but in some of the consulting work that I do, asking
Mhm.
for increases in my fees, I notice how uncomfortable that is. And, I don't love that. I'd like to be better and more comfortable at having those discussions and not so nervous about them. So if there was, I totally hear and love the fact that you're talking about first our mindset around this. Our whether it's a mindset hack or a tool or technique, can you share a few things that might be helpful in terms of, okay, we've realized this, like, okay, I wasn't brought up to learning about negotiation, whatever it is for someone, and here are some of the steps I can take to be better at this.
I think one of the things is really looking at, are you appreciating your value in the marketplace? And this goes back, Ellen, to what you just said. And of there are times when we work for a company and that somebody else sets the fees, and sometimes it can be easier to ask than if we're a service provider and we're asking for ourselves for a service that's basically us. So it's really a little bit more complicated than asking for a product or service. So it really gets down to valuing what you're worth in the marketplace. And so I think there's a couple of things that people can do. Certainly one of the things is research and talk to people about what people make doing what you do for a living. So if you are at a company and you can figure out, and have conversations with safe colleagues to find out what people are making. And I know some companies feel mixed about that, but I think we're moving towards more transparency. Have those conversations. If you're in a position like I am, and this is why I primarily am really reaching out to women entrepreneurs, get someone in your network that is a mentor or somebody that's a sponsor that you can have these conversations with to figure out where you would be. Also, do research online. I mean, that's pretty readily available. But I think the second piece is also more of a psychological piece in that, okay, we can see what other people make. We know what the range might be. but we have to really feel that we provide that value or that we're unique and provide something that's valuable. So I encourage people to actually keep a journal that lists your accomplishments at work, lists the outcomes at work, the things that you're good at. Anytime you do a project, to just really gather all this data. So before you go into a negotiation, not only can you look back and see, oh, this is all the things that I did and this is the impact I had on this company. So you have it all in one place. You also can read that. And by the end, you're kind of pumped up. You're like, wow, I did do a great job. And so you can go into that negotiation feeling really good about how you contributed, or if it's a new prospect or client, how you potentially can contribute to the situation going forward. So I think it's both having the data, the hard numbers, but then gathering the emotional data and the internal data to be able to support yourself to move forward and continue to negotiate and practice at it. And over time, your mindset does change the more success that you have.
I love those recommendations. I can think about groups, mastermind groups I'm in where I'm talking to other peers about what are they, for example, what are they doing with speaking fees now that the world has changed? Or when I was an advisor, like how are you charging for things? And I think that really is helpful. And I know within masterminds I'm in that when someone else looks at the situation you're in, often they can
Mm.
give you a different viewpoint that gives you the confidence to ask for more. I'm also curious when you're in this conversation, how to be looking at the other person's side of things. Because it's not just like, okay, I need to get the most money that I deserve this. It's also wanting the other side to feel really good about where they're ending up too. So, do you have
Well,
suggestions for how to do that?
yes. One of the things that I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I think can go wrong in a negotiation is when you forget about the other person. So I always encourage people to say just the words you use, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Are you negotiating with somebody who has budget? Say it's a corporate conversation you're having. If so, what kind of pressure are they under? Like, who do they have to answer to? What are the things that they need to happen to look successful? Because you want to make them shine as well as get, paid what you're worth. And so often it's asking questions and not rushing the negotiation, which is something I really had to work on in the beginning because I'm like, let's pick up the phone, let's do the deal, let's be done. I can talk about money for 20 minutes and that's all I can tolerate. And what I find is with the bigger contracts, it's really going back and having several conversations to find out, questions like, what's going to make this a successful engagement for you? What's your top priority? How can I, in so many words, make you look good? So I think it's slowing it down. It's putting yourself in the other person's shoes and knowing that often people aren't being mean or withholding. They might just have some limitations. Their limitation could be budget. If you're dealing more with an individual client and it's their own money, yeah, it could be budget. It also could be how they're thinking about money. And so it's really talking about the dollars and cents, but also showing them in using examples and stories and that you are valuable. And so it's worth the investment. But I do think the best deals are two people coming together and deciding to work together where each walk away feeling really good and excited about the collaboration or the partnership. And the bottom line is sometimes you can't get there. And part of negotiation is sometimes deciding, I'm going to need to say no. And that's okay. It's hard, but in the end, it's not as hard as, signing up for something and then feeling underpaid is actually harder in the long run than walking away.
Yeah, and I love the idea of really understanding if it was your client, what their money viewpoint is and making it so
Mhm.
that they feel really, really good about this. Because I can think of situations where an advisor might be, and maybe this is their security level too, but might be like, no, I'm worth this. And I think when there's that much energy around it, there's some self awareness that can be looked at like, why are you yes, you want to value your worth, but if you're insulted that someone's not offering you what you're worth, it might be an opportunity to really look at what's going on for them as well. So it feels like this kind of dance. And as an advisor, I could also see that when you can help a client feel really, really good about that, you've already started the relationship in a way that's going to be so beautiful for them to be talking about money.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think if you have that much energy or that much angst around it, it is worth looking at what's underneath that anxiety, what's underneath that frustration, and to try to do the work that maybe you need to do. The other thing that I think is, really key is for, advisors, especially advisors who specialize in working with women and female breadwinners, women entrepreneurs, upcoming professionals. One of the things that we know women need help with, and men too, but women in this case, is developing those skills, engaging in those money conversations, figuring out how they can get paid what they're worth. Because the bottom line is, if your client feels like you've helped her make more money or negotiate a deal. It's not always about money. Negotiate a deal that allows her to stay home an extra day or has more benefits, whatever it might be that's of value to her. That's going to build and foster trust between you and her. And ultimately, it makes you more successful because you're managing her assets that are likely to grow. So I really think that part of what I want to do going forward is not only help advisors understand their own mindsets, but really help them save the time and energy that I know that sometimes they don't have to be able to offer these skills and this training at a reasonable price for women who are out there and wanting to do this work. And, not everybody wants to do it, but the ones that do, I do think it's something that, you're already having a money conversation with them. So it's expanding the money conversation and figuring out how to really meet them where they're at.
Great. So I'm going to, in a minute, ask you for one last tip. But before that, share with us about some of the ways that resources that are out there for either women entrepreneurs or advisors to refer their clients to or learn for themselves in terms of how to be better negotiators, how to start to look at some of the things that we've touched on today.
Sure. One of the things I've had the advantage of doing during COVID is to develop something called the Breaking Money Silence Learning Lab, which is an online platform that is right now positioned for women entrepreneurs. And so there are free and paid resources there where people can, check it out, start to look at their negotiation mindset, start to develop these skills. I think for advisors, one of the things is you may want to check out this content just for yourself to see, does this make sense? Are there tips and tools that you could bring into your work and make a difference in these women's lives? I think there's also some interesting research out there about women entrepreneurs, and I can certainly send this link to you, Ellen. But there's a study for women entrepreneurs uh, that Carleton University did, which is up in Canada, and it talks about women entrepreneurs and risk. And I think that is a great read for advisors to be able to really understand how holistically women look at money and look at risk and look at their businesses. And that kind of fits with this negotiation piece.
Great. Send me that. We'll make sure it gets into the show notes. So if people want to find out about your free program, the link to that, again, Doug, I think if you can put that up for us.
That would be great.
Yeah. So
So it,
breakingmoneysilence.com and then / negotiating -for -free.
Mhm.
And then your, go ahead, Kathleen, I'm interrupting you.
Oh, I was just going to say, how to conquer fear on negotiation is really that first step for people to look at that anxiety, that fear. It may come out in anger. And so I really wanted people to get a little sample of what that would be like. And that may be enough. You may take that course and go, oh, I'm good. Or then I develop this more in-depth course.
Yeah, and Kathleen has very generously offered a discount for the people watching this, the horse's mouth listeners, whether it's on podcast or the live stream. And then if you go to breakingmoneysilence.com / negotiating and you use the code negotiate 10 and capital N negotiate 10, you'll get a discount on her course. That's really generous of you, Kathleen. So in just a few seconds that we have left, is there one final thought that you want to leave us with around this concept of negotiating?
I would just say dare to have the conversation. I've been traveling around and really doing this work for a number of years now, and I really think, dare to break money silence with your client. Ask them if this is an area of growth for them, and then figure out how to be a support to them, because I think that will make a difference in their lives, and it also will make a difference in your business.
Great. Thank you so much. And I want to just say I'm a huge fan of your work. And I have a t-shirt that says Breaking Money Silence. I'm putting it the wrong way here. And on the back, it says, let's talk about money. So you too could probably be an owner of one of these t-shirts, but grateful for your time and expertise as always, Kathleen. I'm so glad that we had our chance meeting. It's ended up in really a, nice connection over the years for us. So thank you.
Thank you,
And for
Ellen. It's been fun.
And for all of you out there watching and listening, I'm so grateful that you're here with us. There's more information about me at ellenrogin.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download our free report on what clients crave. There's other resources there for you. And very shortly, we're going to be launching our Extraordinary Advisor Program. There's going to be some webinars coming up on finding your superpower, so keep your eyes out for that. I'm so excited to share this information with you. And as always, my question to you is, how big of a positive impact are you willing to make today?